In a bustling city where tensions between law enforcement and communities of color often simmer just below the surface, an unexpected incident unfolded one ordinary Saturday afternoon. The kind of day that usually fades into memory for most. People turned into something extraordinary and unforgettable for Lieutenant Maya Rivers. A decorated leader in the city's SWAT division, Maya was known for her calm demeanor, sharp instincts, and unwavering dedication to protecting her community. But on this particular day, she wasn't wearing her tactical gear or leading her team through high-stakes operations. Instead, she found herself blending into the crowd at a large department store, running errands like any other person. The store was chaotic, with shoppers weaving through aisles stacked high with clothes, electronics, and household goods. Families pushed carts filled with groceries while teenagers browsed racks of trendy sneakers. Maya moved quietly among them, dressed casually in a simple hoodie and jeans, her basket holding a few essentials: snacks for her kids, shampoo, and a birthday card for her niece. To anyone watching, she looked like just another customer enjoying a weekend outing. What no one could have predicted was how quickly this mundane trip would spiral into something far more dramatic. Officer Greg Dawson, a veteran patrolman with a reputation for being overly aggressive, was stationed near the store's entrance. When he first noticed Maya, he had been leaning against a pillar, sipping coffee from a paper cup, when his eyes landed on her. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about her, just a black woman browsing the aisles. But Officer Dawson's gaze lingered longer than necessary. His mind began to race with assumptions, fueled by stereotypes he didn't even realize he held. To him, Maya's casual outfit and relaxed posture seemed suspicious. Why wasn't she rushing? Why did she pause so long near the electronics section? These questions swirled in his head, building a narrative that wasn't based on facts but rather on prejudice. Without bothering to investigate further, Officer Dawson decided to act. He set his coffee aside and followed Maya as she made her way toward the checkout area. Every step she took seemed to confirm his suspicions in his biased mind. When she stopped briefly to compare prices on 2 different brands of chips, he muttered, under his breath, "She's stalling." By the time Maya reached the self-checkout kiosk and began scanning her items, Dawson had already convinced himself that she was up to no good. His hand instinctively hovered over his gun holster as he approached her, his expression hardening into one of authority mixed with disdain. "Ma'am," he called out sharply, startling Maya as she placed her last item into her reusable bag. She turned to face him, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Yes, officer?" she replied politely, sensing nothing amiss. Her tone was calm, respectful, everything you'd expect from someone caught off guard by an interaction with law enforcement. But Officer Dawson wasn't interested in pleasantries. His voice carried an edge of accusation as he demanded, "What are you doing here?" Maya blinked, taken aback by the question. "I'm shopping," she answered matter-of-factly, gesturing toward her basket of scanned items. "I've already paid." But Dawson wasn't satisfied. In his mind, her explanation sounded rehearsed, too smooth to be true. Ignoring her protests, he ordered her to step away from the kiosk and place her hands on the counter. Shoppers nearby paused to watch the scene unfold, some whispering nervously while others pulled out their phones to record what was happening. As Dawson handcuffed Maya, she tried to reason with him, explaining again that she had receipts to prove her purchase. "You can check my receipt," she said firmly, keeping her voice steady despite the growing knot of frustration in her chest. But Dawson dismissed her words, refusing to listen. He marched her toward the exit, ignoring the stares and murmurs of disbelief from witnesses. For Maya, the humiliation of being treated like a criminal in front of strangers cut deeply, yet she remained composed, knowing that losing her temper would only make things worse. By now, word of the arrest had begun to spread throughout the store. Employees whispered among themselves, unsure whether to intervene or stay out of it. One cashier, recognizing Maya from previous visits, hesitated before speaking up. "Officer, I think she really did pay," the young woman ventured timidly. But Dawson brushed her off with a curt reply. "Don't interfere unless you want trouble." With that, he escorted Maya outside, loading her into the back seat of his patrol car as if she were a dangerous suspect rather than a respected member of law enforcement. For Maya, sitting in the cold metal seat of the police cruiser felt surreal. Her mind raced as she replayed the events of the past few minutes, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. She thought about her team, her family, and all the years she had dedicated to serving her city. And yet, none of that mattered in that moment. All Officer Dawson saw was the color of her skin, not the badge she carried or the lives she had saved. As the car pulled away from the curb, Maya clenched her fists, vowing silently that this wouldn't be the end of the story. It would be the beginning of something much bigger. Little did she know, the events of that day would ignite a firestorm of outrage and demand for accountability, forcing the entire city to confront uncomfortable truths about bias, privilege, and justice. But for now, Maya sat quietly, steeling herself for whatever came next, determined to turn this painful experience into a catalyst for change. As the patrol car carrying Lieutenant Maya Rivers sped away from the department store, her mind churned with a mix of emotions: anger, disbelief, and frustration. The handcuffs around her wrists felt heavy, not just physically, but emotionally. She had spent years building trust within her community and earning respect as a leader in law enforcement. Yet here she was, being treated like a common criminal because of someone else's prejudice. Her thoughts shifted to her family. What would her kids think if they saw their mother on the news arrested for something she didn't do? Would they understand that this wasn't about her? It was about a system that still allowed such injustices to happen. The drive to the police station seemed endless. Officer Greg Dawson sat silently behind the wheel, his jaw clenched tightly. He hadn't said a word since pulling out of the parking lot, but his body language spoke volumes. To him, this was just another routine arrest, another case closed before it even began. He didn't bother asking Maya any questions or verifying her claims. In his mind, he had already decided she was guilty, and nothing could shake that conviction. Not her calm demeanor, not her explanations, and certainly not the receipts sitting unused in her pocket. When they arrived at the precinct, Maya was led inside through a side entrance away from prying eyes. Inside, the atmosphere was chaotic but familiar. Officers bustled about, answering phones, typing reports, and discussing ongoing cases. No one paid much attention to the new arrival, at least not at first. Maya was taken to a small holding area where she was instructed to stand against a wall while processing began. It was here that things took an unexpected turn. One of the desk sergeants, a middle-aged man named Carl, approached Maya with a clipboard in hand. "Name?" he asked gruffly, barely glancing up from his paperwork. "Lieutenant Maya Rivers," she replied, her voice steady despite the situation. The sergeant paused mid-sentence, his pen hovering above the page. Slowly, he raised his head to look at her more closely. Recognition dawned on his face almost instantly. "Wait, Lieutenant Rivers from SWAT?" he stammered, his tone shifting from indifference to disbelief. Maya nodded, her expression unreadable. "Yes, Sergeant. I'm with the SWAT division." She reached into her back pocket and pulled out her badge, flashing it briefly before slipping it back in. The room fell silent as the gravity of the moment sank in. Everyone present knew who Maya Rivers was. She wasn't just another officer. She was a trailblazer, a highly respected leader whose tactical skills and leadership had saved countless lives over the years. Seeing her standing there in handcuffs, accused of shoplifting, was surreal. Sergeant Carl immediately called Captain Harris, the head of the department, to report what had happened. Within minutes, the entire precinct was buzzing with whispers about the wrongful arrest. Officers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to react. Some felt anger toward Officer Dawson for his reckless actions, while others worried about the potential fallout. Word spread quickly, reaching even those who weren't directly involved in the case. By the time Captain Harris arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. Captain Harris wasted no time addressing the situation. A tall, stern-looking man with decades of experience under his belt, he strode into the holding area with purpose. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the murmurs. When he saw Maya standing there, his expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. "Lieutenant Rivers," he said, acknowledging her with a respectful nod. Turning to Sergeant Carl, he ordered, "Uncuff her, now!" As the handcuffs were removed, Maya rubbed her wrists, trying to ease the discomfort left behind by the metal restraints. Though relieved to be free, she couldn't ignore the sting of humiliation. For nearly half an hour, she had been treated like a suspect, stripped of her dignity in front of colleagues and strangers alike. Captain Harris apologized profusely, promising that an investigation would be launched immediately to determine how such a grave mistake could have occurred. But Maya knew apologies wouldn't fix everything. This wasn't just about her, it was about a pattern of behavior that needed to change. Meanwhile, outside the precinct, news of the incident was spreading like wildfire. Videos recorded by bystanders at the department store had already made their way online, sparking outrage across social media platforms. Clips of Maya being handcuffed and loaded into the patrol car circulated widely, accompanied by hashtags calling for justice and accountability. Comments poured in from people expressing shock, anger, and solidarity. Many pointed out the stark contrast between Maya's status as a decorated officer and the way she had been treated. Others shared personal stories of similar encounters with law enforcement, highlighting the broader issue of racial profiling. Community leaders wasted no time responding to the growing outcry. Reverend James Thompson, a prominent civil rights advocate, held an impromptu press conference outside the police station. Surrounded by supporters holding signs that read, "Justice for Maya" and "End Racial Profiling," he condemned the actions of Officer Dawson and called for immediate action. "This is not just about one officer making a mistake," he declared passionately. "This is about a system that continues to dehumanize Black men and women simply because of the color of their skin. We demand accountability, transparency, and reform." Protesters began gathering outside the precinct, their numbers growing by the hour. Chants of "No justice, no peace" echoed through the streets as demonstrators marched with signs and banners. Local news crews arrived to cover the unfolding events, broadcasting live updates to viewers eager to learn more. Reporters scrambled to get statements from both sides, seeking answers to the burning question, how could this have happened? Back inside the precinct, the mood grew increasingly tense. Officers huddled in corners, whispering anxiously about the potential consequences of the incident. Some defended Dawson, arguing that mistakes happen and urging everyone to wait for the results of the investigation. Others criticized him openly, accusing him of letting bias cloud his judgment. Meanwhile, Captain Harris worked tirelessly to contain the situation, issuing public statements and meeting with key stakeholders to address concerns. He assured the community that disciplinary action would be taken against those responsible, though he stopped short of promising specific outcomes. For Maya, the whirlwind of attention was overwhelming. She had always preferred to stay out of the spotlight, focusing instead on her work and her family. But now she found herself at the center of a national conversation about race, policing, and systemic injustice. Friends and colleagues reached out to offer support, flooding her phone with messages of encouragement. Strangers sent letters and emails, thanking her for enduring such a harrowing experience and vowing to stand with her in the fight for change. Despite the chaos surrounding her, Maya remained resolute. She knew this moment presented an opportunity, a chance to shine a light on issues that had long been ignored. As she stood in the bustling precinct, surrounded by officers who now looked at her with a mixture of guilt and admiration, she made a decision. This wouldn't break her. Instead, it would fuel her determination to make a difference. Whatever came next, she vowed to use her voice and her platform to push for meaningful reform, ensuring that no one else would have to endure what she had gone through that day. The stage was set for a reckoning, one that would challenge not only the individuals involved, but also the very foundations of the system they served. And Maya Rivers, once wrongfully accused, was ready to lead the charge. By the time Lieutenant Maya Rivers stepped out of the precinct, the city was ablaze with outrage. The viral videos of her arrest had ignited a firestorm of protests and debates. turning what should have been an ordinary Saturday into a pivotal moment for the community. As she walked through the doors of the police station, flanked by Captain Harris and a few trusted colleagues, Maya was met with a sea of cameras, microphones, and shouting reporters. Flashbulbs popped in rapid succession, capturing her every move. The weight of the situation pressed down on her shoulders, but Maya's face remained calm, her posture unwavering. She knew this moment wasn't just about her. It was about something much bigger. Captain Harris attempted to shield her from the media frenzy, raising his hand to signal for quiet. "We'll issue a formal statement shortly," he announced firmly, his voice cutting through the noise. But the reporters weren't satisfied. They shouted questions at Maya, their voices overlapping in a chaotic chorus. "Lieutenant Rivers, how do you feel about what happened?" one called out. "Do you think Officer Dawson should be fired?" another demanded. Maya paused for a moment, considering whether to respond. Her instincts told her to retreat, to avoid saying anything that might inflame the already volatile situation. But deep down she felt compelled to speak, to let the world know that this wasn't just a personal affront. It was a symptom of a deeper problem. "I'll address this soon," she said finally, her voice steady and measured. "But right now, I need some time to process everything." With that, she turned away, leaving the reporters clamoring for more. Though brief, her words carried a quiet authority that silenced the crowd momentarily. As she climbed into an unmarked car and drove off, escorted by fellow officers, Maya couldn't help but reflect on the surreal turn her life had taken. Just hours ago, she had been picking up groceries for her family. Now she was at the center of a national conversation about race, policing, and accountability. The ride home gave Maya a rare moment of solitude, a chance to collect her thoughts and brace herself for what lay ahead. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, each one bringing news of fresh developments. Social media platforms were flooded with posts about her arrest, many of them tagging her name or sharing hashtags like Justice for Maya and Dar and racial profiling. Friends and acquaintances reached out to express their support, while strangers shared heartfelt messages of solidarity. One comment stood out to her. "You didn't deserve this, but your strength gives us hope." It was a small reminder that her experience, painful as it was, had resonated with people far beyond her immediate circle. When Maya arrived home, her family was waiting for her. Her husband, Marcus, greeted her with a tight embrace, his eyes filled with concern. Their two children, aged 10 and 13, hovered nearby, unsure how to react. "Mom, are you okay?" her daughter asked hesitantly, her voice trembling. Maya knelt down to meet her gaze, forcing a reassuring smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she replied softly. "This was just a misunderstanding." She struggled to find the right words, knowing that misunderstanding didn't fully capture the gravity of what had happened. Still, she wanted to shield her kids from the harsh realities of the world for as long as possible. That evening, Maya sat alone in her living room, scrolling through social media updates and watching news coverage of the day's events. Every clip, every article, every comment seemed to reinforce the enormity of the moment. Protesters marched through the streets, holding signs that bore her name alongside calls for justice. Community leaders delivered impassioned speeches, decrying systemic racism and demanding reform. Even late-night talk show hosts weighed in, using humor to highlight the absurdity of arresting a SWAT leader for shoplifting. For Maya, it was both empowering and exhausting to see her story take on a life of its own. As the hours passed, Maya began drafting a statement in her mind. She knew she couldn't stay silent forever, not when so many people were looking to her for answers. But she also understood the importance of choosing her words carefully. This wasn't just about calling out Officer Dawson's actions. It was about addressing the broader issues that allowed such incidents to happen in the first place. Implicit bias, racial profiling, and a lack of accountability within law enforcement. These were the real culprits, and Maya intended to shine a light on them. The next morning, Maya returned to the precinct to meet with Captain Harris and other senior officials. The mood in the room was tense, with everyone acutely aware of the scrutiny they were under. Harris, briefed her on the steps being taken to investigate the incident, including reviewing body camera footage, interviewing witnesses, and launching an internal review of Officer Dawson's conduct. Maya listened intently, nodding occasionally but keeping her emotions in check. When Harris asked if she had any input, she spoke candidly. "This isn't just about punishing one bad apple," she said. "It's about fixing the system that lets these things happen over and over again." Her words hung in the air, prompting nods of agreement from some and uncomfortable silence from others. Maya went on to suggest concrete measures such as mandatory training on implicit bias and cultural sensitivity for all officers, increased transparency in disciplinary actions, and stronger partnerships with community organizations. She also proposed creating a task force dedicated to addressing systemic inequities within the department. Though ambitious, her ideas sparked a productive discussion among the group, signaling a potential shift toward meaningful change. Later that afternoon, Maya agreed to participate in a press conference, an opportunity to share her side of the story directly with the public. Standing behind a podium adorned with the city's seal, she took a deep breath before addressing the assembled crowd. Reporters jostled for position, eager to capture her every word. Cameras clicked and whirred as Maya began speaking, her voice clear and resolute. "What happened to me yesterday was wrong," she stated plainly, meeting the eyes of those gathered before her. "But it wasn't an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern that affects countless black men and women every single day." She went on to describe the humiliation and frustration of being treated like a criminal, despite her credentials and contributions to the community. Her words painted a vivid picture of the emotional toll such experiences take, not only on individuals but also on families and entire communities. Yet Maya refused to dwell solely on the negative. Instead, she framed her ordeal as a call to action, a chance to confront difficult truths and work toward lasting solutions. "We can't undo the past," she said, her tone firm yet hopeful. "But we can build a better future, one where no one has to fear being judged by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character." The audience erupted in applause, a mixture of cheers and tears filling the room. Many attendees held up their phones to record her speech, ensuring her message would reach even wider audiences online. Social media lit up once again, with users praising Maya for her courage and eloquence. Some described her as a modern-day hero, someone who turned personal adversity into a catalyst for change. Others vowed to join her fight, pledging to support initiatives aimed at reforming law enforcement practices. As the press conference drew to a close, Maya fielded a few final questions from reporters. One journalist asked how she planned to move forward after such a traumatic experience. Maya smiled faintly, her expression tinged with determination. "I'm going to keep doing what I've always done, serving my community, protecting my city, and fighting for justice," she replied. "But now I'll do it with even greater purpose. Because if my story can help prevent this from happening to someone else, then none of this will have been in vain." With that, Maya stepped away from the podium, leaving behind a trail of inspiration and resolve. Outside, protesters continued their demonstrations, chanting slogans and waving banners emblazoned with her name. Inside the precinct, discussions about policy reforms gained momentum, fueled by the growing demand for accountability. And across the nation, people tuned in to watch replays of Maya's speech, moved by her courage and conviction. What had started as a humiliating encounter in a department store had transformed into a powerful movement, one led by a woman who refused to let injustice define her. As Maya drove home that evening, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face whatever challenges came her way. After all, she reminded herself, true change often begins with discomfort, and sometimes with a single act of defiance against the status quo. In the days following the press conference, Lieutenant Maya Rivers became a household name. Her face appeared on television screens, newspapers, and social media feeds across the country. People from all walks of life, students, teachers, activists, and even lawmakers, were moved by her story and inspired by her determination to turn a painful experience into an opportunity for change. But while the public rallied behind her, the internal investigation at the police department revealed fractures within the system that no one could ignore. Officer Greg Dawson, the man at the center of the controversy, found himself under intense scrutiny. His actions during Maya's arrest were dissected in detail, with investigators poring over body camera footage, witness statements, and store security tapes. What they uncovered painted a damning picture. Dawson had ignored basic protocols, failing to verify Maya's identity or check her receipts before making the arrest. Worse still, his behavior suggested a pattern of racial bias. Interviews with colleagues revealed that this wasn't the first time Dawson had been accused of targeting people of color. Past complaints against him had gone largely unaddressed, swept under the rug in a department struggling to balance accountability with tradition. The mounting evidence against Dawson put Captain Harris in a difficult position. On one hand, he wanted to protect the integrity of the force and restore trust with the community. On the other hand, disciplining a veteran officer risked alienating some members of the department who believed Dawson was being unfairly singled out. Tensions simmered as officers debated the case in hallways and break rooms. Some argued that Dawson's actions were indefensible and deserved severe consequences. Others defended him, claiming he was simply doing his job and that mistakes happen. The divide highlighted deeper issues within the department, issues that went beyond one officer's misconduct. Meanwhile, protests outside the precinct grew larger and more vocal. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered daily, demanding justice not only for Maya, but for countless others who had suffered similar injustices. Community leaders organized rallies, vigils, and town hall meetings to keep the momentum going. At one such event, Reverend James Thompson delivered a fiery speech calling for systemic reform. "This isn't just about Officer Dawson," he declared, pointing a finger toward the crowd. "It's about a culture of impunity that allows racism to fester unchecked. We need real change, not empty promises." The pressure mounted on city officials to take action. The mayor held an emergency meeting with law enforcement leaders, civil rights advocates, and representatives from affected communities to discuss next steps. Maya attended the meeting, seated alongside Captain Harris and other key figures. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear that everyone agreed on one thing: something had to be done. But opinions diverged sharply when it came to specifics. Some called for immediate termination of Officer Dawson, while others pushed for restorative measures like mandatory training and community service. Maya listened intently, weighing each perspective carefully. When it was her turn to speak, Maya addressed the room with quiet authority. "I'm not here to demand revenge," she began, her voice steady but firm. "What I want is accountability and progress. Firing one officer won't fix the problem if we don't address the root causes. We need comprehensive reforms that tackle implicit bias, improve transparency, and rebuild trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve." Her words resonated deeply, earning nods of agreement from both sides of the table. By the end of the meeting, a tentative plan emerged. Officer Dawson would face suspension without pay pending further disciplinary hearings. In addition, the department committed to implementing several of Maya's proposed reforms, including mandatory bias training for all officers, independent oversight of misconduct cases, and regular forums for dialogue between police and community members. While some critics argued the measures didn't go far enough, most acknowledged it was a step in the right direction. Back at work, Maya threw herself into spearheading these initiatives. She collaborated with experts in diversity training to design workshops tailored specifically for law enforcement personnel. These sessions weren't just about checking boxes. They aimed to challenge deeply ingrained attitudes and foster empathy among officers. Maya also worked closely with community organizations to create programs that brought cops and civilians together in non-confrontational settings. From joint volunteer projects to open dialogues about shared challenges, these efforts helped bridge gaps and humanize both sides. Despite the progress, resistance lingered. Some officers resented the new requirements, viewing them as unnecessary burdens imposed by outsiders who didn't understand the realities of policing. A few openly mocked the training sessions, rolling their eyes or making sarcastic comments during presentations. Maya confronted these attitudes head-on, reminding her colleagues why the changes mattered. "This isn't about punishing you," she told a group of skeptical officers during one particularly tense session. "It's about protecting you and the people you serve. If we can prevent even one wrongful arrest, one unnecessary death, then every second of this is worth it." Her persistence paid off. Over time, attitudes began to shift. Officers started engaging more openly in discussions, sharing personal experiences and listening to feedback from community members. Slowly but surely, walls of mistrust began to crumble. Maya's leadership played a crucial role in this transformation. She led by example, treating everyone with respect and fairness regardless of rank or background. Her dedication earned her widespread admiration, not just from her team but also from citizens who once distrusted law enforcement. Outside the department, Maya continued to advocate for broader societal change. She accepted invitations to speak at conferences, schools, and advocacy events, using her platform to amplify marginalized voices. Her speeches often focused on the importance of allyship and collective action. "Change doesn't come from waiting for someone else to fix things," she told an audience of young activists at a university forum. "It comes from standing, even when it's hard, and saying, 'Enough is enough.'" Maya's influence extended beyond her local community. Her story caught the attention of national policymakers, sparking conversations about policing reform at higher levels of government. Lawmakers introduced bills aimed at addressing racial profiling and increasing accountability in law enforcement agencies nationwide. Advocacy groups credited Maya with helping reignite the push for criminal justice reform, which had stalled in recent years due to political gridlock. At home, Maya leaned on her family for support. Marcus remained her rock, offering encouragement and advice whenever she felt overwhelmed. Their children, too, became more aware of the world around them, asking questions about fairness and equality. One evening, as they sat together at the dinner table, Maya's son looked up at her and said, "Mom, are you scared?" She paused, considering the question. "Sometimes," she admitted honestly. "But I'm also hopeful, because every day I see people coming together to make things better, and that gives me strength." As weeks turned into months, the impact of Maya's efforts became increasingly visible. Trust between the police department and the community improved, though challenges remained. Crime rates dropped in areas where officers actively engaged with residents, proving that collaboration yielded tangible results. Meanwhile, stories of successful interventions, officers diffusing tense situations through de-escalation techniques learned in training, began to surface, reinforcing the value of the reforms. For Maya, the journey was far from over. She knew that dismantling systemic racism and bias would take years, if not decades. But she also knew that incremental progress mattered. Each policy change, each honest conversation, each act of solidarity brought society closer to the vision she fought for, a world where no one was judged by the color of their skin but by the content of their character. And as long as there were people willing to stand up and fight, Maya believed that vision was within reach. Though the scars of her arrest lingered, Maya carried them as reminders of why her work mattered. They fueled her resolve to keep pushing forward, even when the path seemed uncertain. Because in the end, she understood that true justice wasn't about vengeance. It was about creating a future where everyone could live with dignity, respect, and hope. And Maya Rivers, once wrongfully accused, was determined to lead the way. As the weeks turned into months, Lieutenant Maya Rivers found herself at the forefront of a movement that was reshaping not only her city, but also the broader conversation about race and policing in America. Her name had become synonymous with resilience, courage, and advocacy for systemic change. Yet despite the progress she had helped spark, Maya knew that real transformation required patience, persistence, and an unwavering commitment to staying the course. For every step forward, there were setbacks, reminders that dismantling deeply entrenched systems of bias and inequality would be neither quick nor easy. The disciplinary hearing for Officer Greg Dawson finally took place on a chilly morning in late November. Held behind closed doors, the proceedings drew widespread attention from both the media and the public. Supporters of reform gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Accountability now" and "Justice for all." Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Dawson sat stoically as evidence against him was presented, including video footage of his interaction with Maya, testimony from witnesses, and documentation of past complaints filed against him. His defense team argued that he had acted in good faith, claiming he was simply following protocol when he arrested Maya. But the prosecution countered that his actions were reckless, discriminatory, and indicative of a pattern of misconduct. After hours of deliberation, the panel overseeing the case reached a verdict. Officer Dawson would retain his position but face significant penalties. He was suspended for 6 months without pay, required to complete extensive sensitivity training, and placed on probation for 2 years. While some viewed the decision as lenient, others saw it as a compromise, a way to hold Dawson accountable while avoiding further division within the department. Maya, who attended the hearing alongside Captain Harris, expressed mixed feelings about the outcome. "It's not perfect," she told reporters afterward, "but it sends a message that we're serious about addressing these issues." Though the ruling sparked debate, it also marked a turning point. The focus shifted from punishing one individual to implementing structural reforms aimed at preventing similar incidents in the future. Under Maya's guidance, the police department rolled out a series of initiatives designed to foster accountability and build trust. One of the most impactful programs was the creation of a civilian oversight board tasked with reviewing complaints against officers and ensuring transparency in disciplinary actions. Composed of community members, legal experts, and former law enforcement officials, the board operated independently of the department, providing a layer of checks and balances that many felt had been sorely lacking. Maya also championed the use of body cameras and dashboard cameras as tools for accountability. While such technology had already been adopted by some departments, its implementation in hers was accompanied by strict guidelines mandating when and how footage could be accessed. Officers were required to activate their cameras during all interactions with the public, and failure to comply resulted in immediate consequences. This policy not only increased transparency, but also gave citizens greater confidence that their encounters with police were being documented fairly. Another groundbreaking initiative was the introduction of community policing days, where officers spent time engaging with residents in non-enforcement capacities. Instead of patrolling streets in squad cars, they walked neighborhoods, visited schools, and participated in local events. These efforts humanized law enforcement, allowing officers to connect with the people they served on a personal level. Maya often joined these activities, using them as opportunities to listen to concerns and share updates on ongoing reforms. She believed that building relationships was key to breaking down barriers of mistrust. Despite these strides, resistance persisted. Some officers grumbled about the additional responsibilities and perceived loss of autonomy. A few even resigned, citing dissatisfaction with what they called political correctness gone too far. Critics outside the department accused Maya of undermining traditional policing methods and compromising officer safety. Yet, for every detractor, there were dozens of supporters who recognized the value of the changes. Crime rates continued to decline in areas where reforms were implemented, proving that collaboration between police and communities yielded tangible benefits. Beyond her work within the department, Maya became a prominent voice in national discussions about racial justice. She appeared on television talk shows, participated in panel discussions, and delivered keynote speeches at conferences across the country. Her message remained consistent. True reform required collective effort. This isn't just about changing laws or policies, she emphasized during a TEDx talk. It's about changing hearts and minds. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and working together to create a world where everyone feels safe and valued. Her advocacy extended to mentoring young people, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds. Maya frequently visited schools and youth centers, sharing her story and encouraging students to pursue careers in fields traditionally dominated by white men, including law enforcement. Representation matters, she told a group of high school seniors during a career day presentation. When you see someone who looks like you in positions of power, it reminds you that you belong there too. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring many to dream bigger and aim higher. At home, Maya's family adapted to the new normal. Marcus supported her tirelessly, managing household responsibilities so she could dedicate more time to her work. Their children, now more aware of the challenges facing their mother and others like her, began asking thoughtful questions about fairness and equality. During one family dinner, Maya's daughter asked, "Will things ever get better?" Maya smiled, softly placing a reassuring hand over hers. "They already are," she replied, "but it's up to us and people like you to keep making them better." By early spring, the ripple effects of Maya's efforts were undeniable. Trust between the police department and the community had improved significantly, as evidenced by surveys showing increased satisfaction with law enforcement services. Incidents of racial profiling and excessive force plummeted, thanks in part to the new accountability measures. Meanwhile, partnerships between the department and community organizations flourished, leading to innovative solutions for addressing root causes of crime, such as poverty and lack of access to education. Maya's leadership earned her numerous accolades, including awards from civil rights groups and invitations to join prestigious advisory boards. Yet she remained humble, deflecting praise onto the countless individuals who had contributed to the movement. "I didn't do this alone," she often said. "Change happens when people come together, united by a common goal." Still, Maya understood that the fight was far from over. Systemic racism and bias were deeply ingrained in society, and undoing centuries of harm would take generations. But she refused to let cynicism overshadow hope. Every success, no matter how small, reinforced her belief that progress was possible. Whether it was seeing a young black girl smile after meeting a female SWAT officer, or witnessing officers and community members laugh together at a block party, Maya found joy in the moments that reminded her why she kept pushing forward. As summer approached, Maya stood on the steps of City Hall, addressing a crowd gathered to celebrate the one-year anniversary of the reforms. Behind her hung a banner that read, "Together we rise," symbolizing the unity and resilience that had defined the past year. Taking a deep breath, she began her speech. "A year ago, I stood here humiliated, angry, and unsure of what the future held. Today, I stand here hopeful, not because everything is perfect, but because we've proven that change is possible when we refuse to give up." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "We've made mistakes, and we'll make more. But we've also learned, grown, and built bridges where there were once walls. That's something to be proud of. So let's keep going. Let's keep listening, learning, and fighting for a world where justice isn't just a promise. It's a reality." The crowd erupted in applause, cheers echoing through the square. As Maya stepped away from the podium, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for her family, her colleagues, and the countless strangers who had joined her in the fight for justice. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, she faced it with renewed determination. After all, she reminded herself, revolutions aren't won overnight. They're built step by step, moment by moment, by ordinary people choosing to stand up and say, "Enough is enough." And Maya Rivers, once wrongfully accused, was proof that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through, if you were brave enough to let it. As the months turned into a year, Lieutenant Maya Rivers' journey of resilience and advocacy reached new heights. Her story had become more than just a tale of personal triumph. It was a beacon of hope for countless individuals who believed in the possibility of change. Yet Maya understood that true progress wasn't measured by headlines or accolades, but by the tangible impact on people's lives. She often reminded herself that while she had helped ignite a movement, sustaining it required continuous effort, humility, and collaboration. By now, the reforms Maya championed had taken root in her city and inspired similar initiatives across the country. The Civilian Oversight Board established in her department, became a model for other jurisdictions struggling to address police misconduct. Composed of diverse community members, legal experts, and former officers, the board operated with transparency, holding regular public meetings where citizens could voice concerns directly to decision-makers. Its success demonstrated that accountability didn't have to come at the expense of morale. It could coexist with trust and mutual respect. The community policing program also flourished, transforming how officers interacted with residents. Officers no longer patrolled neighborhoods as distant figures of authority. Instead, they walked side by side with community members, learning their names, hearing their stories, and addressing their needs. This shift fostered genuine connections, breaking down barriers that had long divided law enforcement from the people they served. One officer recounted how participating in a neighborhood cleanup event changed his perspective. For years, I thought my job was just to enforce laws, but now I realize it's about being part of the community, not above it. Maya played an instrumental role in these transformations, leading by example and encouraging others to embrace change. She spent countless hours mentoring younger officers, sharing insights from her own experiences, and emphasizing the importance of empathy. "You can't solve problems if you don't understand them," she often said during training sessions. Listening is the first step toward building trust. Her approach resonated deeply, earning her admiration not only within her department, but also among community members who once viewed police with suspicion. Beyond her work locally, Maya continued to advocate for broader systemic reform. She collaborated with lawmakers, civil rights organizations, and grassroots activists to push for legislation aimed at addressing racial profiling, increasing police accountability, and investing in underserved communities. Her testimony before Congress highlighted the urgent need for federal intervention, urging legislators to prioritize justice over politics. "We can't wait for another tragedy to act," she declared passionately. "Every day we delay, lives are lost, families are torn apart, and faith in our institutions erodes further." Her efforts bore fruit when several bills targeting police reform gained traction at the national level. Among them was the Accountability and Equity Act, which mandated independent investigations of officer-involved incidents, banned chokeholds, and provided funding for de-escalation training programs. Advocacy groups credited Maya with helping galvanize support for the legislation, praising her ability to bridge divides and unite disparate voices around a common cause. Despite these achievements, challenges persisted. Resistance to reform remained entrenched in some quarters, particularly among those who feared losing power or privilege. Critics accused Maya of undermining traditional policing methods, claiming that increased scrutiny made officers hesitant to do their jobs effectively. Social media platforms buzzed with debates, pitting supporters of reform against defenders of the status quo. Maya acknowledged these criticisms openly, using them as opportunities to clarify misconceptions and emphasize the importance of balance. "Reform isn't about weakening law enforcement, it's about strengthening it," she explained during a televised interview. "When officers are trusted by the communities they serve, everyone benefits." Amidst the ongoing battles, Maya found solace in small victories. She celebrated milestones like the graduation of recruits trained under the new curriculum, the launch of a youth mentorship program led by officers, and the steady decline in complaints against police. Each success reinforced her belief that incremental progress mattered, even when it felt slow or imperfect. Change doesn't happen overnight, she reminded herself during moments of doubt. But every step forward counts. At home, Maya's family adapted to her demanding schedule, finding ways to stay connected despite her frequent absences. Marcus supported her tirelessly, managing household responsibilities and ensuring their children felt loved and secure. Their kids, now teenagers, took pride in their mother's accomplishments, often sharing updates about her work with classmates. During one dinner conversation, Maya's son asked, "Do you ever get tired of fighting?" She paused, reflecting on the question before responding. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But giving up isn't an option. If I stop, who will pick up the torch?" As summer approached, Maya prepared for what promised to be a pivotal moment. the unveiling of a memorial honoring victims of police brutality and systemic racism. Located in the heart of the city, the memorial featured portraits, quotes, and stories of individuals whose lives had been cut short due to injustice. It served as both a tribute to their legacies and a call to action for future generations. Maya worked closely with artists, activists, and family members of the victims to ensure the project honored their memories authentically. On the day of the dedication ceremony, thousands gathered to pay their respects. Maya stood alongside grieving families, community leaders, and elected officials as speeches were delivered and songs performed. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped to the podium, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "This memorial reminds us of the cost of inaction," she began, gazing out at the sea of faces. "It reminds us that behind every statistic is a person, a son, a daughter, a friend who deserved better. And it reminds us that we have the power to create a different future, a future where no one has to fear those sworn to protect them." Her words struck a chord, prompting waves of applause and tears. As the ceremony concluded, attendees laid flowers and candles at the base of the memorial, vowing to carry its message forward. Maya lingered afterward, speaking quietly with families and offering words of comfort. Though the pain of loss lingered, so too did a sense of solidarity, a shared commitment to ensuring such tragedies never happened again. In the months that followed, Maya continued to balance her roles as a leader, advocate, and mother. She traveled extensively, delivering lectures, hosting workshops, and meeting with policymakers to discuss strategies for lasting change. Yet, she never lost sight of her roots. Whether attending a neighborhood block party or visiting a local school, she remained grounded in the community that had shaped her. Her presence served as a reminder that leadership wasn't about titles or accolades. It was about service. Looking back on the past year, Maya marveled at how far they had come, and how much work still lay ahead. The road to justice was long and winding, fraught with obstacles and setbacks. But she refused to let cynicism overshadow hope. Every smile, every handshake, every expression of gratitude reminded her why she kept pushing forward. "Progress isn't linear," she often said. "There will be highs and lows, victories and defeats, but as long as we keep moving, we're heading in the right direction." As autumn leaves painted the city in shades of gold and crimson, Maya reflected on the lessons she had learned. She realized that the fight for justice wasn't just about dismantling oppressive systems, it was about building something better in their place. It was about creating spaces where everyone could thrive, regardless of race, gender, or background. And it was about recognizing that change started not with grand gestures, but with everyday acts of courage and compassion. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sunset, Maya felt a profound sense of peace. The scars of her arrest still lingered, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they served as reminders of the strength she had discovered within herself and the resilience of a community determined to rise above adversity. For Maya, the journey was far from over, but she faced it with renewed purpose, knowing that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through, if you were brave enough to let it. And so, Lieutenant Maya Rivers, once wrongfully accused, now a symbol of hope, continued to lead the charge. Not because she sought recognition or reward, but because she believed in the promise of a better tomorrow, because she knew that revolutions weren't won overnight. They were built step by step, moment by moment, by ordinary people choosing to stand up and say, "Enough is enough."